My message this morning is called What Palm Sunday and Holy Week Mean to Us Spiritually. In Christendom, Palm Sunday ushers in the events of Easter Holy Week, the last week that Jesus walked upon the earth physically, with an abundance of activity in the life of Jesus and his disciples. This morning we'll take a metaphysical perspective as we explore the happenings occurring to Jesus on Palm Sunday, during the Last Supper, the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the crucifixion on Good Friday. In this way, we can experience a deeper understanding of how these experiences of Jesus impact and bless us personally today. You see, Palm Sunday and the events of Holy Week are not just experiences that Jesus had Easter week, but they're symbolic of spiritual experiences that you and I have in our lives today. We will also be holding a Unity Spiritual Communion service after this Sunday message. I'm remembering a story. This Sunday school teacher was asking her students about Easter. What is important about Easter, and what does it mean to you, she asked them. One little boy piped up that to him, Easter meant about 2 weeks of eating egg salad sandwiches. Well, okay, responded the teacher. But she continued to ask her class what they thought the meaning of Easter was. A little girl in the class responded, well, you know, it's about Jesus. She said, it's about Jesus on the cross, and he died, and he was buried, and then he came back to life. At hearing this, the teacher was so pleased and so impressed that this student actually knew the story of Easter. Well, the little girl got so excited because her teacher was impressed that she went on with the Easter story. She continued, then, when Jesus got up, he saw his shadow, and this meant 6 more weeks of winter. She was apparently just a little bit confused in her stories. But today is the third most religious holiday in Christianity. The first, of course, is Christmas, when Jesus is born. And in Unity, this birth of Jesus represents the birth, or the first inkling in our awareness that we are something more than just human beings. We begin to get in touch with the fact that we are spiritual beings, that we have within us something very, very special. Jesus' birth represents the dawning awareness of what the Apostle Paul called Christ in you, your hope of glory, indicating that there is something divine, the spark of God, dwelling within us. Number 2, second in significance to Christians is Easter. This is when Jesus demonstrates that life is eternal by rising from the dead after being crucified. The Christ in us, that aspect of God that here in Unity we call the Christ, is able to bring renewal and to revitalize us when the burdens of living and learning, that's our trials and tribulations, are too much for us, and we let our hopes and dreams for something better die. There is always the opportunity for us to rise up when we have fallen, to forgive ourselves, forgive others, and make new starts in our lives. In John 16:33, Jesus tells us, these things I have spoken to you, that in me you will have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. This overcoming of the world, this renewal, revitalization, and transformation in us is into a better, joy-filled experience and a better, joy-filled existence. This is what Easter can bring to us when we understand and we apply Easter as a spiritual process. More about this next Sunday on Easter. Then, the third place of the most important Christian holiday is Palm Sunday today, which outwardly celebrates the triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem during the last week of his physical life on earth. And it ushers in the experiences of Jesus at the Last Supper with his disciples, the agonizing experience of Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the events of Good Friday, when Jesus is arrested, placed on trial, and is crucified. We should note that as a Jew, Jesus had been to Jerusalem many, many times during his life, attending the Jewish festivals and feasts. At this time, he decides to go to Jerusalem again for the Passover feast, despite the warning of his disciples that this time was different. This time was most dangerous for him. They all knew that the Jewish religious leaders were bent on trying to get rid of him for three basic reasons, and there had already been several attempts to take his life. First, the Jewish religious leaders thought that his pronouncements of his oneness with God were outright lies and deceit. They called this blasphemy, when Jesus went around equating himself with God and telling the people that they have the same kind of connection with God that he had. Blasphemy in the Jewish faith was punishable by death. For example, when Jesus told the crowds, "I and my Father are one," we read in John 10, verse 30 through 33, that the Jews took up stones again to stone him. And then when Jesus declared, "I am the light of the world," in John 8:12, and then in Matthew 5:14, Jesus says to the people, that is to you and me, "You are the light of the world." These teachings did not bode well with the Jewish religious leaders. Now, the second reason that these leaders were out to get Jesus was because Jesus turned the religious laws upside down. He was always challenging and encouraging people to explore different understandings of the Jewish laws. Some examples are given in the 5th chapter of Matthew, verse 38 through 45. He said, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." And then later in verse 43, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father in heaven." And so as people heard about Jesus' teachings and they witnessed his miracles, the more people began to turn to him as a spiritual leader and teacher. And the more the Jewish authorities feared the loss of their power and authority over the Jewish people. Third, these Jewish leaders feared that the Jewish people would try to make Jesus their king and bring down the wrath of the Roman emperor on the Jewish people. So, this decision to enter Jerusalem at this time was a major life-changing decision for Jesus, and he was making a commitment to stand firm in his mission. Jesus knew well the prophecy in the Old Testament in Zechariah 9:9, which told the Jewish people, "Your king comes to you, triumphant and victorious. He is humble and riding a donkey on the colt, a foal of a donkey." And Jesus stages his entrance into Jerusalem riding on a lowly donkey, so as to bring this prophecy to the mind of those crowding to see him as he enters Jerusalem. But we know from Jesus' teachings that he was speaking about a kingdom not of this earth, not a physical kingdom, but the kingdom of God within. When the crowd saw Jesus approaching, in Matthew 21, verse 1 through 11, they spread their cloaks on the road for Jesus to ride upon. Others cut down branches from nearby palm trees and spread these on the dusty road, or they waved them to help cool Jesus in the heat of the hot desert sun. They were treating Jesus like a king. The Bible tells us that the crowd went ahead of him, and those that followed behind shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest." Here's what I believe that Palm Sunday teaches us. I believe the meaning of Palm Sunday is to help us understand that there are and there will always continue to be moments in our lives when we have to make difficult, life-altering decisions. We can choose not to be fearful of these decisions. As Jesus contemplated the coming events in his life, the coming events in his life, he had a decision to make. Palm Sunday was a point of decision in his life. Right at the start of this day, Palm Sunday, Jesus could have made a different choice. He could have stopped, dropped everything, called the whole thing off, got off the donkey, and went back to his hometown to apply his trade as a carpenter. You know, we all have pivotal moments like these in our lives. Always on the road of life, we are faced with possibilities to which we may say yea or nay. We always have the ability to decide which way we're going to go when we are facing Jerusalem. Jerusalem represents our life path. This is the Palm Sunday process, and this occurs to us over and over again in our lives. We may choose, yes, we are open to new possibilities, or no, we're closed to change. God doesn't force us to have good experiences. God doesn't force us to accept blessings in our lives. We must make these decisions ourselves and then follow through with what needs to be done by us. In the decision to move down our Jerusalem road, we learn to trust that God's will for us is only the highest and the best. But to be open to new things, new possibilities, which are often the scary unknown for us, we have to choose to travel our personal Jerusalem road. We can't stand forever at the point of decision or at the crossroads. The decision we make to face what our Jerusalem road brings to us allows us to discover what brings us joy and what makes us a blessing to our world. We may agonize over these decisions, but we are never, ever alone in having to make them, because through affirmative prayer and meditation, we can be in touch with the source of wisdom and guidance, God's presence in us. So, when we find ourselves called upon to make these important life decisions and choices, we can recognize these as Palm Sunday moments in our lives. By staying open to inner guidance, we can make these important decisions and then rest in peace with the assurance that whatever life does bring to us on our Jerusalem path, we have within us the inner resources to meet it, greet it, and to move through it as victoriously as Jesus did. On Thursday of this Holy Week, Jesus has his last meal with his disciples, commonly called the Last Supper, meeting in an upper room somewhere in Jerusalem. To this traditional feast of Passover, Jesus adds a spiritual twist to what the bread and the wine represent. And this new understanding has become the basis of what we Christians call communion. I will facilitate a unity spiritual communion at the conclusion of my message today. The reading about the Last Supper is that while they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave this cup of wine to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this," he said, "in remembrance of me." And that is why many Christian churches practice spiritual communion. The blood represents life. It is the element of divine life that functions within our human bodies, and indeed within the body of all living creatures. A covenant of blood meant a bond of love, which is stronger than the bonds of family members who are of the same bloodline. During the meal, Judas goes to make a deal with the Jewish religious leaders to tell them how and where they may get their hands on Jesus. After the meal, the other disciples go with Jesus to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus asked 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John, to go with him to the Garden of Gethsemane, an olive plantation, to hold prayer consciousness with him and to remain vigilant, because he knows that at some time during the night or early on Friday morning, Judas will be coming and bringing the authorities with him to arrest Jesus. But the disciples keep falling asleep, and Jesus finds that he only has God, that Christ's presence within him, to help him make the decision, yes or no, to continue with his mission or not. In the garden, while Jesus prays, his human nature and his divine nature are clearly seen. The Bible tells us that Jesus became greatly distressed while praying in the garden, even falling down on his face in tears and in fear as his human nature or ego self called out to God to be released from this experience that he was facing. Jesus' human nature is shown in that he was basically saying, God, get me out of this. I don't want to do this. He prays, let this cup pass from me. Let me be released from this work, this process. Eventually, however, during this process in the garden, Jesus comes to himself, and he receives the inner guidance, the inspiration, the reassurance, and renewed strength and faith that he needs to make a decision about the path he will continue to walk. And now Jesus prays, God, not my will, but thine be done. And in this, Jesus is saying, I will let the will of God, the divine nature in me, express in and through me as I finish the work that I have come to do this lifetime. You and I can let this be an affirmative statement that we can use. We can affirm, not my limited human will, but I will that God's will of good be done in and through my life. Not my limited human will, but I will that God's will of good be done in and through my life. And now I invite you to join me in a unity spiritual communion. The rest of the Easter story will be coming next Sunday, and we hope that you join us that time, here on Unity of Manhattan Live. As I speak the words of this spiritual communion in first person, I invite you to accept these words and to speak them silently to yourself if they're comfortable for you. So let's begin by teaching our body what we mean when we tell it to relax. You might like to close your eyes and turn your attention inward now to the body. And I want you to tense up your body, crunch up your body as much as possible, and hold this for a few seconds. And then with an exhalation, a swoosh of breath, let this tension go. If you want to, you can do this exercise again to teach your body what you mean by letting go. And then let yourself become aware of your breath. Breathing in peace, relaxation, and letting this breath go to every muscle, nerve, and cell in your body, relaxing it. And when you breathe out or exhale, allow the breath to carry with it any worry, fear, any tension, any concerns over your day or over your life. Realize that you can take a vacation right now from all of those things and return to what concerns you from a new heightened spiritual perspective. Affirm, I breathe in peace. I relax and let go my worries, fears, anxieties, any concerns about the rest of my day or the rest of my life. I choose to declare a vacation from whatever disturbs the calm peace of my mind and body right now for this spiritual communion. Communion is a very personal experience which occurs whenever we connect in consciousness to the Christ within. We symbolically eat or mentally take in the awareness that the bread of life is the foundation of all that appears in spiritual or material form. And as Jesus took the bread, blessed it, and broke it, and then gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take, eat, this is my body," silently affirm to yourself, "I am created out of the substance of God. The bread of life is this presence of God in me." Silently affirm to yourself, "I am created out of this substance. All that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive is composed of this universal divine substance of God." Breathe in that awareness. Affirm to yourself, "I take into myself now. I eat the thought, the awareness, the sense, the feeling, or the mental image that whatever I need, I already have as a mighty resource of God within me." Divine substance now takes the shape and the form of my deepest heartfelt desires. Whether this be for physical healing, for healing of relationships, for the healing of financial concerns, I now claim and breathe in, I eat this greater awareness of the bread of life, God's substance. Breathe that in. And now silently affirm, if I have a need for more love, for happiness, more wholeness, for peace of mind, I take time to get still and realize this. Make it real by settling into a deeper dimension of quiet energy within me. And now rest for a few moments in this awareness of taking in, appropriating, eating the bread of life, which is God's substance. And now we turn to the wine, which Jesus said symbolized his lifeblood, the life of God in him and in us. Co-founder Charles Fillmore, Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore wrote that when the new Christ life comes into a mind, excuse me, a mind where old beliefs concerning the body have been held, the body is transformed, he said, into its innate spiritual perfection. And this is called putting on the mind of Christ. And so, as Jesus took up the cup of wine, he gave thanks for it, and he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Drink all of this, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." The blood, the wine, represents the energy and the life of God. It is the animating principle in us and in all of life. This is our unity understanding. At times when we do not feel our best physically, we are needing a new influx of this vitality or life of God. We drink it by filling our consciousness with affirmative statements, which allow us to consciously take hold of mentally and draw into our minds and then into our body new vitality. The process of regeneration begins in our mind and it proceeds in our body. And although this happens automatically as the body begins the natural healing process after we have been ill, when we consciously reflect on the restorative process and we claim in our mind the infilling of this vitality, we draw on a much greater quantity of this vitality of God within us, making our renewal and revitalization quicker and more full. And let's take time now to consciously drink into our awareness, draw to our conscious awareness, this renewing, revitalizing energy, which is God in us, God life in us. So take a few deep breaths and affirm to yourself something like the following. The perfect life of God is my life. The blood, the wine that Jesus spoke of represents the animating principle in me and in all of life. Divine life in my body moves in and through every muscle, every nerve, every cell, every atom and nucleus, which comprises my physical body, my astral, psychic, and spiritual bodies. Old, worn out, or depleted cells are replaced by new, vital cells. The God life in me expresses its perfection in my mind, in my heart, in my body, and in my life experiences. I relax in this experience, feeling renewed and strengthened, restored to wholeness. Divine substance and divine energy, the bread and the wine of communion, flow in and through my being. And as my being now, I am healed on every level of my being, and I am grateful. And now, rest in this awareness for a few moments. Feel the truth of these affirmative statements. As we continue to eat, to appropriate, and to drink this awareness that spiritually the bread that Jesus broke represents the substance of God out of which all things are created. That substance takes the shape and form of that which we hold in our mind under the law. The law of mind and action, which states that which we hold in our mind takes shape and form in our experience in some way. So whatever we need, we shape out of this substance of God which indwells us. And we drink in the awareness that the wine represents the energy, life of God that flows within us and through us. We have everything that we need, the energy to move forward in our lives, and the substance, the ability to shape and form what we need on this Jerusalem path. And with confidence, we can face our Jerusalem on this Palm Sunday, this moment of decision, and every Palm Sunday in our lives. And so we are so grateful for this understanding and this experience of Unity's community. Unity's communion, spiritual communion. And so now I invite you to allow yourself to feel appreciation and to know that any time that you desire to, you can have this unity, spiritual communion.
God bless you.